Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. Today, we are talking about our new Blogger Playbook. It is a guide from our Blueprint series. This is actually the third guide from that series, and we're super excited to talk to you today about this book. And we have a couple of really fantastic bloggers online with us as well, who are also authors in the book. So we're going to just chat about everything you should know about blogging, some tips from the book, and also encourage you to get your copy of that book as well, which is now available online. We will share the link in the chat window shortly. But first of all, let's go ahead and start talking about what you need to do to get started today. So we want to talk about if there's any issues with the webinar, what you do. So if you try logging out and then back in, and if you have any issues persisting, go ahead and call that help desk number that's listed here on your screen. If everyone can hear me now, if you can just raise your hand, it's on the right-hand side of your screen with a little hand icon, just to let us know that the sound is working today. Let's see. Looks like you guys can hear us. Perfect. So we want to let you review this webinar again. We know there's a lot of valuable information and questions that we'll be answering. So we will actually send this presentation out to you. It's usually by end of week. This is a holiday weekend, so it may be by Monday. But essentially, everyone who is part of this webinar, who are registered or joined today live, will get a presentation with the recording, the slide deck, as well as FAQs, so you can review it later in your free time. We are so excited to have you all here today. So let's talk about what we're going to learn. We're going to go through a few different things, but first, I'm going to start talking about branding your blog. So branding is going to be talking about everything from your domain name to how you stand out from the crowd. Next, we'll go into social media, how to use it for a blog, and SEO. Maddie Osman will talk about SEO and how you can get the best effects out of that. And then we'll talk about monetization, how to make money from your blog, which I know everyone is interested in, especially in times like this. And then we're going to go into Onika Raymond and Steffi Hernandez, who will be talking about niche blogging. So let's get started. It looks like today we have myself. I'm the content manager for Bluehost. We have Onika, who is a travel blogger. We have Maddie Osman and Steffi Hernandez, who actually we didn't confirm before this, but I'm sorry about that. Her picture's not here, but we will introduce her a little bit later in her own slide. We also have Desiree, who is our content specialist, who will be here to answer any questions that you throw in our questions panel that you'll also notice to the right-hand side of your screen. So let's get started. I'm going to start talking about branding. There are a couple things that you have to do to make your blog stand out from the crowd. So you really have to think about what you want to say, how you want to say it, and make sure that it's something that's meaningful to you. In a lot of conversations that I've had with other bloggers, they talk strongly about choosing something that really resonates with you because it will stand the test of time. So essentially, if you start writing about food blogging, but you don't actually like food, or you don't actually like, cooking or eating out often, that's probably not something that's going to be sustainable for you. So you really have to think through, what do you want to say to the world, and what voice and tone do you want people to feel when they read your words to make them come off the page and kind of resonate with your audience and with you as well. So when you're thinking about your blog and branding yourself, it's important to think about consistency. So using a consistent voice with your messaging and all of your content. So when you post something online, make sure that it sounds like something you would say, right? If someone met you out, at a conference or out in the world, would they recognize your tone of voice and your tone in the words that you use and the way that you describe things? whether that be, exclamation points to prove that you're, excitable and a happy, go lucky person, or will they feel something different when they meet you? So really making sure you hone in on being consistent, and also not being the same across all channels. We're going to talk about social media soon, and I know a lot of our bloggers have a lot of great words to say about um, using social media for your blog. But it's really important to make sure that your content is unique. So, knowing that your audience is different in different places will help you understand that it's not a good idea to actually start talking about something on Instagram the same way that you would on Twitter, right? Like those are totally different audiences. And you don't want to lose that opportunity to meet your audience where they are on whatever platform that is. And then also be really creative about how you share or cross promote your content, making sure that you're being consistent in your messaging, and that you're really thinking through what you want to say and how you want to say it. As a reminder, I do see a few questions coming in. We will have a copy of the presentation sent to you later, as well as the link to the slides and a couple of FAQs. So next, a major part of your branding that no one really wants to talk about because it's not quite as fun, is your domain name. It's really, really important to choose something that's creative and memorable and easy to remember. So one of the biggest things we say is to avoid special characters, and most of the time you can't use a special character anyways, other than like a dash or something like that. But using numbers can be really confusing for people. So if you're not going to purchase 2 domain names and allow, people to find you from either one of those, you really want to make sure that it's very clear. So if your name is, 3 marketing agency, try to avoid using, that number if possible for the domain itself. Maybe your brand is that, but maybe the link is something slightly different, or try to think of a name that you can translate, all the way across. Just because people will say, do I use the numerical 3 or do I write it out? Like, what is the actual link that I should be going to? Also, super long names are very hard to remember. And also, on top of that, people are consistently trying to figure out if they spelled something right, or if they're picking the right, phrasing. If it's marketing, is it MKTG, or is it, spelled out marketing? So just try to think through these things as you're creating your domain name. Also, you want to make sure that it's available on your preferred platforms. So if you don't prefer to use, if you want to use, social media, which I heavily suggest, especially for a blog. Again, a lot of people on this call would agree with me on that. You're going to want to make sure you have the same name across everything if possible. There's times when that's not possible, and a lot of people have made it work. But if you think of something like, if I want to have a food blog and I want to call it Michelle's Food Blog, I want to make sure that name is available on Twitter, on Instagram, on Pinterest, on Facebook, wherever I could potentially be, or wherever I want to stake my claim. So that's heavily important to do that early on. Also, you want to think about photography. It's something that actually is a passion of mine. I'm a wedding and portrait photographer as well. But I think the major part for a blog, or whatever look that you're trying to get across on your website, that you have an established look that will reflect the overall feel of your brand. So if you're light and airy, your photos are light and airy. If you like dark and really contrasted tones that really feel like you see emotions in it, make sure that matches your tone of voice and how you write, but also how you photograph yourself and other people that you're photographing for your blog. I know that Steffi will probably talk about this as well, creating a consistent look, but it's really important to think about that. If you can take your own photos, it's definitely suggested, and I think the reason for that is because photography is not cheap. It's something that you want to be able to get lots of photos, lots of images of yourself, and consistent content to go out on a regular schedule, a regular cadence. So if you can take some of those photos yourself, the better off you are, right? If you do hire someone, make sure you give them creative direction, because a lot of times, even as a photographer myself, I don't necessarily know how you want your brand to look, right? Like, you have to tell me that. I do have my own consistent style as well. But it's important for people to find the right photographer that matches their style, and or offer some creative direction on what you're looking for ahead of your session. So those are just some things to think about in terms of photography and branding yourself. So next, let's talk about some tools of the trade. This is something that you'll find consistent in our book. All of our sections come with tools of the trade, things that those professionals suggest that you use to get a different look or feel, to manage your blog, all of these different types of things. Don't feel like you need to write all these down. Again, we will send it out to you. But when you're using photo editing, there's a lot of really cool tools. Lightroom is my favorite, as well as Photoshop, but that does require a little bit more training. But Lightroom is really easy to create presets. Presets are also something we talk about in the book. They are basically, you take a photo, you pull it up, and you say, hey, I want this to look a little bit darker. I want this to be, a little bit more clear in this way. I want, a vignette, a darkened edge or something like that. And then you save that, and then you can use that later for any other photo. So basically you get a consistent look, which again is super important, especially on your, social media feeds, especially in places like, Instagram. If you're creating Instagram stories, there are a lot of cool places to do that. Canva is one that I use in particular. And it allows you to take, it already pre-sizes it for you. It allows you to put in, the content that you want to say, you save it, and then you upload it to your Instagram. But it makes it really easy to build out some of those things. And then of course, like video editing, if you choose to do video, you definitely want to use something that, where you can cut out any, mistakes that you made, or at the beginning or end, if you're filming yourself, you don't want, the video of you walking up to the camera and then the video of you walking away from it, to be part of your brand. So thinking about things like that and trying to make sure you have a consistent look, by editing things to add, even your title. If there's a title of the blog or vlog that you're creating, that's a great way to do that. Also, as far as like organization and planning, later is a great place to do that. You can plan out your posts, see how they look in format, schedule them out to go. And then if you're using Pinterest, there's a lot of great tools for using Pinterest, and Tailwind is another app that you can use as well. These are, a few of the things that you could use to help you. Again, don't feel like you need to remember it, but we will send it out to you, but just some things to consider. Okay, so next, let's talk about social media. I'm trying to pace myself. I want to make sure I'm not going too quickly, but also want to give our guests on the line some time to talk and to share their expertise as well. So social media for your blogging, again, it's super imperative that you're online. You have to use social media for your blog. So let's talk about some of the reasons why that's important. So it's one of the most cost-effective ways to build awareness for your brand. It is literally a way for you to freely post and share information. There's a lot of ways that you can get people to follow you from using social media. I personally don't feel like anybody should have a business, a blog, or otherwise an online store, anything like that, without having social media. It is one of the easiest ways to market yourself, and it is also social proof. So social proof means, like, if you have a blog, or for example, if you have an online store, right, and you're selling products or services, people want to know that they can trust you, right? They want to know that you're an actual business, you're an actual person, you're an actual real life thing that won't, steal their money, or that's legitimate, right? And so when somebody goes to your social media page, they're able to then see, wow, other people are following them, they're consistently posting, they're clearly active, right? So being active is one of those things that social media can give you without you having to do a lot of work. I understand that a lot of people don't feel like they're social media savvy or anything like that. There are tons of tools to help you do that. Like I said, Canva is another one where you can create posts, not just Instagram stories, but creating posts and scheduling them out and doing them in batches to make sure you're consistent. Maybe it's every Tuesday and Thursday you post. Whatever schedule it is that works better for you, just trying to get out there and using the least amount of money to prove out your business, gain your followers, getting your loyal followers, even more so than just the people, but getting people that are really interested in you as a person, you as a brand, the things that you're saying, all of those things. Social media does that for you for a really low amount of money. And if you're paying any money, it's probably for the services that go along with social media, not for the posts, like ads or things like that. So when you're choosing your social media handle, one of the things that we talked about was making sure you try to match the same as your domain or as your business name. And also making sure there's not any positive or negative sentiments across that name anywhere else. I've seen this happen to people before where they've created a brand and they're like, this is, this name I love and it's great. And I want to make sure that, people, see the passion that I have behind this name, but then they go back and they Google that name and there's 5 other companies that have terrible reviews or things like that can really impact your business in the long run. So it's really, really important to think about, what are other people saying about that name in the market, in the world, and online, right? Also try to choose things that are fairly short. I know Twitter has like a character limit and a lot of them have character limits, right? But choosing something that's really long, it's distracting, right? And so you don't want to be distracting when you're trying to get people to start following your brand. Also, try to avoid super clever things, and it can be catchy. You can have some catchy things like Paws R Us, right? Something like that would be like, oh, it's about dogs, right? And it's a play on Toys R Us, which is no longer in business, but that kind of play on words is good sometimes, but being too clever sometimes can fail you in the end. And then you don't necessarily want to use any super personal things if it's not part of your brand. I've talked about this in many webinars before, but if you are a life coach, your brand is directly tied to you as a person. So those two things become more synonymous than somebody who has an online store, for example, and doesn't necessarily want their name associated with the brand. They want the brand to stand out for itself. So just thinking about things like that when you create your name will be super helpful for you. Then let's talk about writing your social bio. Writing your bio should start with very simple things. Who are you? What do you blog about? I know some of the people on this call have great Instagram bios that are just as simple as saying, hey, I'm this person, this is my name, I'm a travel blogger, I'm a food blogger, follow me at this place, these are the things that interest me. And then it kind of sets your tone as well, right? It's the first thing people see when they get to your profile. So if you're super happy and chipper and use emojis, people are going to think maybe you're a little bit more lighthearted than someone who says, I write things, right? Like that doesn't sound as like engaging or as exciting, as some of the other things that you can use. Also, tell people how they can get in touch with you. If you're, trying to get yourself out there for media or for opportunities, it's really important to say, hey, you can email me at this address. And if I have a different account, if you have a separate account that's maybe separate from your blog, how can you find me in other places? This is my name on, for my personal account. And then on top of that, where's your domain? Like how can they get to your website? How can they read more about you? How can they engage with your content? That's how you get them to do it. As simple as doing it there. So don't stop just at your bio. After that, you have to figure out ways to connect with your audience. And you connect by being engaging with them, responding to their comments or their posts as much as possible. Now, if you have 500,000 followers, it is impossible, and I would not suggest you to try to respond to everyone who has something to say. But maybe after you post, you spend 10 minutes responding to people who engage with you and saying like, hey, I love that you love this post. Thank you so much for responding or commenting. Whatever it is, if they ask a question, try to answer some of those questions. Also, being engaging can be going live on Instagram or Facebook and giving people an opportunity to ask you questions. I would suggest if you're going to go live, giving people a warning, a fair warning to say, hey, I'm going to be live tomorrow at 5:00, right? That gives them an opportunity to remember or to plan it. And then an hour before, maybe say, hey, I'm going live in an hour, so that people can try to gather their things to be prepared to spend time engaging with you and asking you questions. I've seen a ton of musicians, artists, bloggers, all these people that go live and they have super engagement on these live posts. That's an opportunity for people to get to know you as a person, whether you're doing something silly, answering questions. If you're a food blogger, maybe you're cooking a meal. Those do really, really well on Instagram in particular. But there are also, YouTube. You can go on YouTube. You can go on TikTok. There's a ton of different opportunities for you to engage with your audience. Also, be authentic. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. I think it goes without saying that people will respect you more if you are who you are. If you don't want to show every aspect of your life, you don't have to. If you don't want to, give your thoughts on everything that you believe, you don't have to. But understand that the more you can be authentic and true to yourself, the more people are to respect you and to follow you. And again, staying consistent is a huge key. You absolutely have to be consistent, because if you're posting only if you're only posting every 6 weeks, people are not going to know to continue following you. They may not continue to follow you because you're inconsistent, and they may think that you no longer care about your blog or your brand. And so you can lose out on followers that way. Okay, so after that, let's talk about how you actually measure whether you're being successful or not. So the success of your blog or your social media is, am I saying things that are relevant to my people? And I say my people being my followers, my loyal readers, all those people. Are you saying things that are relevant to them? Are they engaging with you? And do you feel like you're being robotic? Are you posting the same thing? Like, do you post a quote with every photo that you post, and it's nothing about you or nothing about something that's going on in the world or whatever it is? Like, are you being too robotic? Finding ways to show your personality will take your brand really far, especially as a blogger. And then, how are you standing out in the crowd? Are you getting hundreds on Twitter, especially? You get hundreds and hundreds of posts, on your feed, and you can lose things quite quickly. How do you stand out? Like, how are you getting things that are coming out hourly? Are you engaging with your posts? Are people engaging back with you? That's a great way to tell if you're being effective. There are also things like followers, which we don't super support, obsessing over followers. You want people that are loyal, right? The number of people that you have is only as important as the number of the amount of engagement you get. So you really want to make sure that you're saying relevant things to the people that you are trying to reach with your blog or your social media site. So with that, I know I rushed through that pretty quickly, but I really, really want you guys to hear some great speakers that we have. So I'm going to hand it over to Maddie Osman, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about SEO and why that's important for your blog. Take it away, Maddie.
Okay, here we go. So I am Maddie Osman, and I run a company called The Blogsmith. We do SEO content creation for B2B technology brands, especially in the WordPress space. And my first blog, I started shortly after graduating from college, and was in all these sales jobs, and I always wanted to do marketing. And so I finally just kind of made my own job and created a lifestyle blog in Chicago. And I don't live there anymore, so I don't really update that blog anymore. But what I learned there, a lot of it had to do with search engine optimization. I was looking for different ways to promote my blog, and to try to find ways that were economical, both in terms of my time and then also in terms of things like other paid promotional ways you could just get your blog out there. And I just found search engine optimization to be one of the best ways to do it. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide and talk about some of the basics of SEO. And certainly we could dive in deep and get really technical here, but I figured for the sake of this presentation, we'll kind of keep it light. But if you have any questions after we go through this, or if you just want to chat about SEO, either drop them in the chat, or you can always reach me on Twitter. I'm at Maddie Osman, which is MADDYOSMAN. Always happy to help. So let's go ahead and just kind of define, like, what is SEO? SEO just means search engine optimization. It's the act of trying to make it easier for people who represent your ideal target audience to find you based on the terms that they're using in search, based on the specific keyword, query, or phrase that they're dropping into their browser. So the search engine results page, which you see here as an acronym, the SERP, is just that page that you see after somebody types in a query and presses enter, and then you see different results that you could choose from. And so a search engine results page not only represents these organic ranking opportunities where people are creating content for those specific keywords, it also refers to when people are doing pay-per-click advertising. So a search engine results page is essentially the mix of those organic content results as well as results that people are paying for. And I think my general recommendation for people on this webinar, for bloggers, for people who are just getting started out, is test out SEO before you get into spending money, because there's a lot of crossover, I think, in terms of specifically the idea of optimizing for certain keywords. One thing to keep in mind too is that pay-per-click advertising, PPC, is something that works as long as you put money into it, but the minute that you turn it off, that means that there's no way for people to come to your website from that specific tactic. Whereas SEO is kind of more of a long-term game. It's something that you're investing a lot of time and effort in up front, and you might continuously invest effort in updating content over time. But it's something that can pay off over the long term, and that's why I think it's worth focusing on from a blogging point of view. So I think that covers the basics. Let's look on the next slide, which is what is SEO and how does it help my blog? Basically, the way that I look at it from the content perspective, and really what made me want to learn it when I was working on my own lifestyle blog, is just that you put so much effort into creating content, and it doesn't take a whole lot of extra effort in order for something to rank in relevant search. And so why not take that extra time to more or less translate your content for the Google robot who is looking for these key signal areas on your page. It's looking to see what's the context of your content. What different topics do you talk about? Even if you're optimizing for one keyword phrase, what are related topics that might also provide ranking opportunities? And I think it's also worth mentioning that although you want to be optimizing for Google, the ultimate end user of your content is a human reader. And so you never want to optimize for Google at the expense of that human reader. But I think there's a way to toe the line, and we'll talk a little bit about how to do that specifically. But I think like one of the points on this slide is that it's a conscious effort on your part to reach your blog's target audience. SEO doesn't necessarily work unless you are putting a conscious effort into it. So you might have like the greatest piece of content ever, and it might be really long and have a lot of different sections for Google to understand the subtopics and things like that. But unless you're taking the time to optimize your content, then you shouldn't expect it to necessarily come up in relevant search. So I just wanted to drive that point home, that it comes down to great content, but it also comes down to proper process. So let's look at the next slide. And this will help you start to understand what SEO really is. I would say it's broken down into 3 distinct pillars. And if you asked other SEOs, they might have their own ways of describing these different things, but these are kind of like the main overarching points of where you want to focus your efforts on with SEO. So obviously a big one is content, just creating it, possibly besides writing, also creating things like video content, or using other types of media within your content to engage readers, but also to engage Google and to help them understand what your content is about. And then in addition to content, a related piece of SEO is on-page SEO, which is taking your keyword research, taking whatever keywords you're trying to optimize for, and then plugging them into those key signal areas, which include things like the specific link to your blog post, or the title of your blog post, the meta title, I should say, the meta description. There's other places that you can plug in keywords to help Google understand, as well as other signal areas that you should optimize to just add more context to your content. So then we get into like website technical structure. And if you're a student of SEO like me, then you're probably familiar with things like speed and performance. But for everybody else who this is not necessarily what you do on a daily basis, this includes things like making sure your website looks just as good on mobile devices as it does on desktop computers. You know, going page by page and literally checking after you publish a blog post to make sure that everything's showing up exactly how you want it to, and there's no confusion or messy formatting or design. It's also things like Google recently told us that HTTPS is a ranking signal, and that just means that you've installed an SSL certificate on your site. And by doing that, typically in the past, this is something that like, you know, your online bank would be concerned with, or an e-commerce store, because they're handling very sensitive data of yours and their other users. But the takeaway that I think, you know, if you take away anything from this webinar is that if you don't have an SSL certificate installed, even if you're not an e-commerce store or a bank, it's really important because it's just another one of those Google technical structure related ranking signals. And really, like, for any sort of like technical thing with your website that you can do well, that just gives you more of a chance to rank high in relevant search. And what it comes down to with technical structure is like all else equal, if someone's website has better performance than yours in terms of some of these different technical things, then their content, even if your content is better, might outperform you. And so that's why we care about this stuff. Just a couple other things to say with that. Speed, your page load time. There is a test that you can plug your website's URL into that comes to us from Google. It's called Google Page Speed Insight. So it's a free tool you can use to see exactly how Google is measuring your website's load speed. Google also has a mobile friendly test that you can test your mobile responsiveness with. So yeah, if you're using WordPress specifically, there are a lot of plugins that you can use. I think I actually do talk about that. No, yes, we do. Okay, I'll get to that at the end. So I won't talk about that yet. Let's talk about one more thing on this slide though, which is backlinks. And so essentially, if you have really great content, then it's easier to get people to want to link to it. But building backlinks is not really a passive thing. It's definitely an active part of SEO where you're trying to find sort of like win-win opportunities for other websites to link to you. And we can get into that a little bit more later, but that kind of covers the basics of the 3 pillars of SEO that you need to be creating great content, make sure your website is performing well, and also be you know, taking a conscious effort into building backlinks. And we'll talk a little bit more, but let's go ahead and go to the content slide. So it really starts with keyword research. I personally think that you probably shouldn't even start a new blog post until you've validated that the idea is something that, first of all, people want to read, and second of all, that you can realistically rank for. I personally use Ahrefs, which is Ahrefs, as my sort of like all-in-one SEO tool to help me do this keyword research, and then to also measure my effectiveness at ranking for those keywords. It is an expensive tool, so I will say that unless you're treating your blog as a business, or for small business owners out there who want to make sure their content's going as far as they can and they're not working with like a separate content team, it's worth the investment. I think that it's actually an undervalued tool. But anyway, find some sort of keyword research tool that can give you data. You're looking for things like being able to measure monthly search volume. That's not the most important thing though. I would say that keyword difficulty is perhaps more of an important focus, because if the keyword difficulty is too high for you to be able to rank for that term, then there's not a whole lot of point in going after it. And so kind of getting into the nuance of keyword research is probably outside of the scope of this webinar, but definitely hit me up in the chat or on Twitter if you want to learn more about that. I have a lot of resources I could share. We talked about crafting quality content. That's really like the gold standard of content. If you do one thing, just do your content really well. And I think to do that, you have to put yourself in the mindset of your user, your target audience. And a couple ways you can do that is by, like, if you have a contact form, like what are the questions people ask you? Are those things that would make great blog posts? Doing keyword research is obviously another great way to do that. And then also like joining networking groups or professional organizations that represent your target audience is another great way to just kind of like be present when people are talking about things they want to learn about, and then being able to act on that. Checking out the competition is, I think, an important part of content creation, because you want to know what like what people have already been writing about, how they've been writing about it. And my personal stance is like, don't reinvent the wheel. If content's already been created, you want to create something that's either better or like a different stance. Don't just create the same content because like you want to try to rank for the same thing. Like add a unique angle, and that's what's going to be what, you know, also helps with the backlink side of things. So we can go to the next slide. And I've probably already covered a lot of this stuff. Let me just think. Okay, so like other things to think about include, and these are things that you could implement with SEO plugins, like Yoast SEO is a really good one for some of this technical structure stuff, specifically like implementing a sitemap. And something that's worth mentioning too, which is a very new update to WordPress, is that they are going to start including functionality in the core WordPress software to automatically generate a sitemap. And so a sitemap basically just says like, Google, here's the different pages on my website, you know, here's kind of like my menu structure, like here's like the parent and the children topics, like how they're loosely related to each other in terms of like what a menu would look like. So it's just another thing to help Google understand like what your site's all about, what's the relationship between different pages and posts. Another good point worth expanding on here is removing broken links. So Yoast SEO can really help if you are changing URLs. It'll help you automatically redirect to the newest URL without having to manually make that redirect happen. And you know, the problem with not fixing broken links is when Google looks through your site and they might look at your sitemap or, you know, their data that's out there, essentially Google can see, you know, like, okay, so this page isn't loading, but it was linked from that page, and then here's another one, and it starts to hurt Google's trust in your website. And so the whole point of removing broken links is just to make it really easy for Google to always recommend your site in relevant search. And then, yeah, the last point here, just being like, think like a visitor, put yourself in their perspective. I would even suggest periodically doing user testing. And so this is something where you could like hire people from like either usertesting.com or like a gig marketplace like Fiverr, and you can hire people to just go through your site and rip it apart. And it's hard for people to, you know, be mean to your baby, but ultimately that's what you want. You don't want people to be just telling you what you want to hear. You want to know like, what are the actual issues that I might be blind to because I'm just biased because I'm the one who made this site and I love it, and you know, it's the way I want it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the way that it should be for your users. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide on backlinks. And I think we're getting to close to the end of this section. So backlinks, it's just a link from another website to yours. Not all backlinks are equal. So like, let's just say that I got a backlink from a website that was just launched yesterday. That's not going to have the same impact as, say, for example, getting a backlink from like the Washington Post, which is an established publication that has a lot of people also linking back to them. And so backlinks is another thing, or I guess I should say, your website has a score that's called either domain authority or domain rating, one of these things, depending on what tool you're using to measure it, but it means the same thing. And it's just like, how many websites are linking to my website, how many relevant websites are linking to my website, and what is their authority, also as measured by the same metric. So it's kind of like a topic that's hard to explain without like putting numbers in front of you. But the idea is that the higher your domain authority, the more likely you are to rank in relevant search. And it's also a metric that you can use to compare yourself with competitors to see, like, all else equal, would I be able to outrank them? So yes, let's go ahead and talk about just a couple tools that I would definitely recommend for your toolkit. All the Google tools at the very top are absolutely free to use. Please take advantage of them. Google Search Console and Google Analytics are something that you would have to integrate with your website. There's like a JavaScript code, and I think there's also a new WordPress plugin that comes from Google. I think it's called SiteKit, where you can just like grab the information and plug it in without having to go in and like drop the code in, if that makes sense. And we already talked about page speed insights and mobile friendly tests, good things to periodically throw your URL into, just to make sure that there are no obvious issues. And of course, like, being able to understand SEO from Google's perspective is a really valuable opportunity, because you know, obviously we don't know everything about how SEO works. Google keeps a lot of that a secret, but we do know, based on these tools that they give us, at least some of what goes into ranking. So then a couple of WordPress plugins. Updraft Plus is just a backup plugin. Most web hosts have a backup solution in place, but it's always good to have a backup to the backup, just in case, just to spread out your files a bit in a worst case scenario. And Updraft Plus is the only free WordPress plugin that allows you to automatically schedule backups. So that's a really important distinction. WP Rocket can help you with page caching, which just helps to speed it up. There's a little more nuance to it than that, but that's essentially what it does. Smush, and then another one, Short Pixel, or image optimization plugins. So especially for the bloggers out there who have like a recipe blog or photography, fashion, you probably have a lot of really like high resolution images. And so using those tools will help to make your page load faster without sacrificing quality. And then Yoast SEO Premium, we've talked about. It does Yoast SEO Basic, the free version, is really great, but for someone who's treating their blog as a business, I'd recommend upgrading, because it'll make your life a lot easier for basic SEO tests. And then Ahrefs, like I said, is an all-in-one SEO tool. You could also use SEMrush or Moz to do a lot of these same things, and they just help with a lot of different aspects of SEO. So I think we're good to move on to monetizing your blog. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide to talk about affiliate marketing. So there are a lot of different ways that you can use to monetize your blog. And I think it's important to keep an open mind, because sometimes it seems like, oh, this is the only way to do it, and you kind of pigeonhole yourself. But like for me, I mean, my business is mostly content writing, and so I offer a service. But, you know, even as bloggers, like, you could offer consulting, you could be a brand ambassador. Like, there are a lot of services that you could offer before even getting into things like products, or what we're going to talk about next, which is affiliate marketing. And so affiliate marketing, you can kind of think about it kind of like being a salesperson who works on commission. Essentially, anytime that you use like a tracking link from a brand that you work with, that you have some sort of partnership agreement with, anytime someone clicks that and then makes a purchase, or there might be other mechanisms for doing that, but that's just kind of the main way to do it. Anytime that happens and you get a commission of the sale, and it's something that's pre-negotiated, affiliate marketing companies or companies that you would work with as a partner are pretty good about putting terms together and making it really clear. There are definitely different levels of programs that are worth your time. Like, some of them will give you an ongoing commission. So say, for example, you are an affiliate for, let's just say something like Calendly, which is a calendar scheduling tool. Like, they might set up their affiliate program so that an affiliate makes a cut of every time that customer is charged. So either annually or you know, every month as they pay their bills. So some of them will only give you a cut at the onset, the first transaction that happens. And it's important to think about, when you're selecting affiliate programs that you want to get involved with, like, what's going to give me the most return on my time? Because part of being an affiliate marketer means that you're going to be doing work for this brand in terms of creating content on your blog, sharing that content on social media. You might be coming up with even like custom assets, like an ebook that explains like how you use that tool, or custom landing pages for special offers that they're putting on. And so you definitely want to make sure that it's worth your time. And I think like some of these other points, like vet the brand, like is it actually a fit for your audience, or are you just distracted by the high commissions that they're offering? I think that a lot of bloggers at some point during their career get into that like existential question of sorts, which is like, do I promote this at the risk of maybe coming across as inauthentic to my audience, because it has absolutely nothing to do with what I blog about? So that's definitely a point worth like really taking to heart. I personally, when I do affiliate marketing, I'm trying to focus on either products that I actually use, or like products that my clients use or that I use like on their behalf. It definitely helps to have a personal relationship with that product as a user, even if it's just going through demos and things like that and interacting with their sales team. But if you can't speak to it from any experience, then it's probably not going to be a great fit for your blog. So another thing to keep in mind is to just add value. A word on affiliate links. So when you're adding affiliate links to your blog or social media and things like that, you always want to disclose that it's an affiliate link. And one way I do this on my blog is just at the very top of every blog post, everyone that includes affiliate links, I say, please note, this blog post contains affiliate links for products that I love and use. And you'll want to play around with the language, because it can feel kind of awkward, but you got to make it your own. As long as people know kind of before they dig into the content, that's really what we're going after. And it's also a matter of adding like the affiliate like hashtag to your social posts and things like that. Another thing worth mentioning is tools like Pretty Links. I think we're actually going to talk about some tools we can use. But basically, like something like Pretty Links makes it so that you can easily add affiliate links to your blog and then change them in the back end if that tracking link ever changes, without having to go in and update every blog post. And yeah, don't just use one affiliate link on your page. Like make sure you're repeating it, because the way that people convert on a blog post or on a website when they're making that decision to make a purchase, it happens at all different times. It could be at the very beginning, it could be at the end, but it could be at the middle too. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next one. We've probably talked about a couple of these things, but essentially, traffic is the first piece. If nobody's coming to your website, it's going to be hard to make money on affiliate marketing. So that definitely has to be a huge focus for you when testing out this tactic and trying to monetize it. Let's see, looking for other places where you can post like other blogs, other social media using SEO. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. And this is going to be really similar to SEO, which is just that, there's different ways to monetize with ads. You could do banner ads on your website, or you can do pay-per-click ads. I would suggest probably trying not to spend too much money on affiliate advertising, because the purpose is to make money from it. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Just a couple plugins that can help with monetization. WooCommerce is WordPress's e-commerce tool. It's plugin, it's extension for e-commerce. So that's, you could sell products and services. Easy digital downloads makes it easy to monetize with like downloadable products. And Ad Rotate is just a plugin that you can use to set up ads on your site for different advertisers and different different ways that you could incorporate it on your website. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on now to our next presenter. But again, let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Maddie. That was perfect. For time, I think I'm going to go ahead and go directly into Steffi, just to make sure that we don't miss anything, that we give her an opportunity to speak before our time is up. So I did write some questions down that we'll have answered at the end. Also, as just a reminder, we will send you the link the presentation, as well as some FAQs that we've been answering during the session and that have come up later. Also, if you have any questions that you don't think may get fixed here, just ask them. We'll have a list of all the questions that were asked and we can do something with that then. So Steffi, if you want to take over, you are welcome to start.
Okay, hello. So my name is Steffi and I am a lifestyle blogger. I am also a freelance writer. I have been running my lifestyle site, The Tiny Herbivore, for over 3 years now. I cover trendy topics such as wellness, style, food, and even pop culture. My content is short form, easy to digest, listicle content that people just love to share. During this time, I was able to use my experience to help me move into my career of being a writer. Currently, I freelance for a few publications such as BuzzFeed, Medium, and a couple of other smaller websites. I'm also working on my first novel, which I thought was always fun to say. So I get asked a lot through social media, what are some of my tips for someone who is trying to get started with a blog? And we did speak about this a little bit in the beginning, but I want to kind of hone in on building your brand. So I'm just going to break it down as easy as I can. One of the most important parts of starting your own brand is figuring out what exactly you want your theme to be. This means color palette, aesthetic, topics you'll cover, fonts you'll use, slogans, etc. Basically, all those types of things that create one brand. When you're working on your image, some things you want to focus on is your content. By this, I mean, don't rely on stock photography on your website if you are focusing on a personal blog. For example, I have a more impersonal website that allows me to use stock photography, but in terms of my social media, it's all about me. So some niche blogs that you have probably seen are, fitness, fashion, home decor, health, finance, food, you've seen all of them, but lifestyle specifically kind of takes little bits and pieces of these different niches and puts them into one topic. So when you start to create content for your brand, it's important to remain cohesive by editing your photos in a similar manner. Basically, I wouldn't post a super vibrant summer photo next to a moody black and white grainy photo. Like, that's just not going to work for my brand. I want my brand to be recognizable and for people to see my content and have it be aesthetically pleasing to their eyes. I want them to recognize who I am based on the things that I put out there. Visuals are incredibly important when you're trying to create this. For these kinds of photos, some equipment that I recommend is obviously a quality camera. You can either invest in a really nice camera, or you can use a smartphone that has, a high quality camera built into it. To be honest, 100% of all of my videos and photos on my social media and my blog are taken with my iPhone. Again, this will depend on whether or not you want to have more professional curated images on your page or just fun personal content that still has quality to it. Next, I would get obviously a tripod with a self-timer remote if possible. This will come in handy when you don't have the ability to hire a photographer to help you, or you don't have somebody who can take your photo for you. Yes, it is a little weird if you're in public and you're trying to take a self-timer photo, but it's what we do for the gram. Once you get your, all of this equipment ready, I recommend getting a computer if you don't already have one. Most of us do. Which you would use to edit photos, videos, and just be able to work on your website and your social media much more comfortably than just using a phone. When this is all set, it's obviously time to create your content. But what platforms are you going to use? This is something that you need to figure out. I know there's a saying that says, don't put all your eggs in one basket, But I also believe that you shouldn't put all of your eggs in every basket. Quality over quantity. You don't have to have every single social media platform to be successful. Focusing your energy on only a few platforms will create less stress and higher quality content. For example, me personally, I focus on my Instagram account, my Pinterest, and TikTok because they work well with my brand and who I am. When you start to grow these accounts, whichever ones you choose, you'll start to see a specific type of income start to trickle in. Which brings me to one of my favorite myths I hear all the time, which is that you can't make money with a lifestyle blog because it's not as niche as other topics. And obviously, this couldn't be further from the truth. Some ways that you can make money with a lifestyle site specifically is, as we've mentioned, affiliate marketing. But for me, I use it in a different way. I don't choose specific services, but I use it to link products that I recommend based on the content that I have created. As an example, if I write an article about 10 exercises that you can do to relieve anxiety, I will post links to some equipment that you can buy, outfits you could wear, or even just similar products like water bottles or fitness trackers that might be something you are interested in based on the fact that you are reading this post. Additionally, I make money running ads on my site, and most of my money is made with collaborations with brands through my social media platforms, specifically my blog and Instagram page, which is why it is so important to bring your brand to different platforms and not just keep it as your website as much as you might want to, because social media can be a little scary, but it's important to just kind of make yourself known in different platforms. Another myth that I love to debunk is that to have a lifestyle blog, you need to put your personal life out there. And if you haven't seen my site, The Tiny Herbivore, I suggest you check it out. It's super fun. And it currently just doesn't have much to do with me. When I first started, I would post personal content about my life until I quickly realized I have no life. So I focused on the topics that I love to read about. My social media platforms are, however, about me and my personal life because I still wanted to put a face to my website, but I also really wanted to create a site where someone could go on and find lots of different content that they would enjoy. Whether it's a recipe roundup on 10 high protein breakfast ideas, spring fashion trends, 10 shows on Hulu you need to binge watch, whatever it is, it's easy to read, it's trendy, and it's just really entertaining. And that's what I was going for my specific website. So to create everything that I do, I want to share with everyone some of my must-have tools to keep me from going crazy. To manage my blog as well as my freelancing, I use Trello, which is a project management website. It also has an app, and I would be lost without it. It is really amazing at organizing everything that you could possibly think of, even unrelated to your website. I also use, surprisingly, the Notes app on my phone. Sometimes the most simplest thing is all you need. I have over 300 notes full of a whole bunch of chicken scratch that I probably don't remember what it was, but I keep it there just in case. For file sharing, I use Dropbox for everything. It also is really great at helping you click between your phone and your desktop really quickly. For stock photography, which I use on my website, I use Unsplash and Pexels, which are updated constantly and they have amazing photos. To edit my videos, surprisingly, I do not use my computer. I use my phone specifically because that's where I take my videos. And I use an app called Video Shop, which has a monthly subscription. And it's the best money I've ever spent on an app. Having a lifestyle site is really, really fun. I just really enjoy doing it, but it's also really freeing for me because it gives me the opportunity to write about several things that I really enjoy without feeling the restraint of just writing about one specific topic all the time. Again, this is my own personal choice. If you are more into specific niche content, I'm going to pass the torch to Anika, who is an amazing travel blogger with content that you don't want to miss.
Super pumped to dive deeper into your blog and your social. So hi, everybody. My name is Onika Raymond, and I actually am the author of a travel blog. And as you can imagine, at this current time, I'm not doing much traveling, but luckily I have lots and lots of photos and videos and blogs in the archive that you can all check out. So basically my blog is called Unique the Traveler, and I started blogging in 2005 while I lived in France. And I was bitten by the travel by the travel bug after living abroad in France for a couple of years. And I started my website as a means to keep in touch with friends and family back in my home country of Canada. Now, this was before social media really existed. This was certainly before Instagram. And in terms of email, it was really difficult to keep track and email a bunch of people and attach photos and so on and so forth. So I decided that I was going to start a blog and have it be kind of my personal journal and a repository for pictures and words about my journey that, you know, friends and family members could check out. However, it grew into something more, and currently I have traveled to nearly 120 countries, and I actually work in travel media full time. So what started out as a passion project has now turned into a profitable career. And I'm not only a travel blogger, but I also work as a travel journalist and also as a television host. And I've hosted for Travel Channel, and I currently host for NBC in New York, where I live. Now, my travel blog, Unique the Traveler, explores travel through an educational and cultural lens. Don't get me wrong, I'm all about the amazing travel photos, but I really do like to dive into different cultures and write about them, and also to teach people about how to travel, and obviously the things and the people and the places that they will encounter while they travel. So in terms of starting a travel blog, it's obviously a niche topic, absolutely. But this advice that I'm about to give you is advice that I would give anybody who is wanting to start up a blog, and that is to own your own content. I really feel that beginners or people just starting out, I know that it's really tempting to only put your stuff on social media. I know that Instagram, for example, is all the rage, but I think that it's really important to have your own website. And also, I think it's important to have it on a self-hosted platform or website. So in my case, I have a self-hosted WordPress website that is powered by Bluehost. And I think it is so important because should, for example, Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, should they close down tomorrow, I will always have my site and I will always own my content. So I think that is really, really important so that you can exercise 100% control over all of that content that you spend so much time putting your heart and soul into. I also think that when you're starting up a site, and again, this is, you know, not only for travel blogging, but I think it is a general tip as well. I think that when you are starting up your site, or you know, you're starting to post on a platform, on a social media platform, you should launch with at least 5 amazing pieces of content, whether those are blog posts, videos, photos with captions. It is important to establish yourself with your readers and to make them want more. So you're going to start with at least 5 pieces of amazing content, and then you're going to continue to post at least 2 to 3 times a week for the first couple of months in order to build interest and then keep the interest and momentum going. Now, a lot of people will say, wait a minute, this is just kind of my hobby, it's a side hustle. Where do I find the time? Well, I think that for the things that we enjoy and the passions that we have and the seeds that we plant and want to have grow, that it's super important to put time aside and to make time. So I highly suggest getting into your calendar, you know, definitely use a calendar, Google Calendar works for me, and setting aside a time every week where you can dedicate yourself to creating content. And don't be afraid also to be working on multiple ideas or multiple pieces of content simultaneously. Now, if you go into the back end of my blog, you'll see that I typically have anywhere from 8 to 15 drafts. And these are posts that I started. I wanted to jot an idea down, similar to Steffi's Notes app, for example. You know, I get in there and I have an idea and I jot it down, and then I may come back to it a little bit later. But it's great that I have, or at least that I've planted the seed. The next piece of advice I have is to write your heart out. Now, when you're growing your audience, it's really important to continue to build on your skill set, which is writing. And so you want to make sure that you're writing quality pieces of content, but practice makes perfect. So you can use this time that you've dedicated to build up your site with quality articles, quality content that are relevant and that are valuable to your audience. Now, one of the reasons that I feel that I've been really successful in this field is because I have not shied away from self-promotion. And this goes back to using different tools and different platforms in order to promote yourself and your work and to have your work seen. So when you're trying to build a brand, you need to be on different social media platforms and you need to be on them consistently. Now, as Steffi said, I don't believe it's important to be on every single platform. I think it makes more sense to choose 2 or 3 or 4 that you know that you will be able to manage and post on consistently. In order to promote yourself, you not only need to use social media to build your brand, I think it's super important to create something that is called a media kit. And a media kit is almost like a resume of all of the amazing things that you've done with your brand and with your website. So in your media kit, it's going to be a document. It can be a PDF document, it can be a Word document, and you're going to include your bio, your contact information, your social media handles, any analytics that you've been able to accrue. So I'm going to talk about that in the next section, but Google Analytics is a great way to track, for example, how many page views your blog is getting. And then you also are going to include any past work that you've done with brands in the past. And essentially, this is going to be your CV or your resume. So when brands do approach you to work together, or when outlets want to interview you or engage you for some sort of project, you have this resume that you can forward to them, and it's it shows the clout that you have in the industry. Finally, I think it's important to offer incentives like giveaways in order to draw more followers and fans. Again, it is extremely important to promote your work. You put so much time into creating these pieces of content, and so you want to get eyeballs on them so that everybody knows how great you are at what you do. Now, I just wanted to go into a couple of myths and I wanted to debunk them. And one of the myths that I hear all the time, especially as somebody who works in the travel industry, is that in order to have a successful travel blog, you have to travel really often. Now, I would say that that is categorically untrue for a couple of reasons. First of all, a lot of the time, we think that as travel industry people, travel bloggers, that we have to go to the farthest, most exotic places. But guess what? There is so much content just floating around in your own backyard. For instance, I currently live in New York City, and due to the global pandemic and also the fact that I'm a new mom, I just had a baby at the beginning of January, I have not left New York, I have not been on a plane in 7 whole months. But with that being said, not only do I have an archive of content that I can dip into from my past travels, which is very helpful, but I also live in New York City. And New York City is the Big Apple. It's super interesting. There are loads of things to do. Culturally, it's extremely interesting. It's visually evocative. And so therefore, it's just a breeding ground for all kinds of content. Now, even if I didn't live in a major metropolis like New York City, even if I lived in, say, Ithaca in New York State, there are so many people who do not live in Ithaca and who would be really interested to know what life is like there. And so really, it's important to realize that even though a destination may be known to you, it's completely new to someone else. And therefore, as a travel blogger, to be successful, you just have to create really compelling content. And honestly, the destination is only a small part of it. The other myth that I wanted to debunk is that if you have a travel blog, you'll be able to get paid to travel right away. And again, I have to say that that is categorically false. It takes time. It takes time to build a brand. It takes time to build a blog, and you need to be consistent. And in terms of travel blogging, it's the exact same thing as with lifestyle blogging or any other form of blog. You have to create a bank of material before you're able to make bank, so to speak. So you need to establish content, you need to establish credibility in the field. And honestly, if you build it, they will come. I spent a lot of time creating really awesome content that people found engaging and interesting and helpful. And on the back of that, I've been able to make a full-time living from travel blogging, from affiliate links, from brand partnerships, and in a whole host of other ways. But at the end of the day, content is really king. And it's because of my content that I've been able to form paid relationships with brands, with companies in the industry. Finally, I wanted to end off with a few of my must-have tools for travel blogging. Now, I highly and heartily believe that it is extremely important to have your own website. Now, a lot of people, once again, as I said a few slides before this, a lot of people will tell you that you can exist solely on social media. I do not believe that. I really want to debunk that way of thinking. I think it's important to have a website, and therefore I am a huge fan of WordPress. I've been on it for quite some time and feel that it is a must-have tool. The Jetpack plugin has also been really useful because for somebody like me who is not very technical, I am very much a plug-and-play person. And so Jetpack, there are a number of different apps in there that help me maintain my website very easily. Also, getting or being able to have access to your analytics is super important if you want to work with brands, if you want to basically cement yourself or show that you are a professional in the space and that you have clout and that you've been successful. It's really important to be able to have analytics to show. So I recommend two programs for getting analytics. One of them is Key Search, and obviously earlier on in this presentation we talked about SEO. Now, I am not the SEO specialist here, but Key Search allows me very quickly and easily to see which keywords I can potentially rank for when I'm writing my articles. At this point, it's really important for me when I sit down to write a piece of content for my website that it's going to be found by people and that it's going to rank high or highly enough in search. And Key Search allows me to do that. Google Analytics, I mentioned before, it's perfect because I am able to find out how many people are viewing my website. I can also kind of take stock of which content is doing well, what I should be writing more of, what I should be doing more of in terms of my portfolio or in terms of the content that I'm putting on my website. The third must-have tool for travel blogging, in my opinion, is Canva. Now, again, I'm not super technical, but I do know that Pinterest is extremely important in order to drive traffic to my website. And therefore, I use Canva to create graphics and to create pins that I attach to the end of each blog post. Now, I also lately have been using Canva to create covers for IGTV videos. I create covers for, covers for newsletters and whatnot. And so I find Canva very, very, very helpful. They have so many different templates with graphics and so on and so forth that honestly have been invaluable to me. And finally, as a travel blogger, pictures are super important. Imagery is extremely, extremely important. So for myself, I use a DSLR camera and I shoot in RAW. And that basically means that I have a lot of leeway when it comes to editing my images. And so I edit my images with Adobe Lightroom, which again is an extremely powerful program. I have both the desktop and the mobile versions, and cannot recommend it enough because it just helps my images pop. And then I also really like a free app that's really quick and easy. It's on mobile only, and it's called Touch Retouch. And it allows me to, again, touch up my photos. If I have, a small mark or something that I need to remove, I can do that quickly and easily right on my phone. So that is basically it for me. I hope that you've enjoyed this very quick rundown of kind of behind the scenes of how I run my travel blog and the programs and the different elements that I think are key in order to be successful at travel blogging.
Thank you so much, Onika. That was great. I enjoy both you and Steffi and all of your expertise, Maddie as well. You've all been so helpful. I know we are well over time, but we still have a lot of people who are hanging in there with us. So I'm going to go over a few questions before we drop off, just to get an opportunity for each of them to talk about it, their different niches and businesses. So Onika, this question is to Onika and Steffi. A couple of people have asked, how long did it take for you to monetize your blog? So I'll let Onika go first, and then Steffi, you can take it.
Sure. So you know what? My blog was just a hobby blog. I mean, I started my very first blog in 2005. I didn't get serious about blogging until 2009. And my first paid assignment was in 2012, but I wasn't looking for these paid assignments. It wasn't until about 2016 where I decided to get serious about blogging, i.e. start doing it full time. And within 6 months, I was able to start really getting paid. But that was because I think I already had, I had so many blog posts from when I was just doing it as a hobby.
Awesome. And Steffi?
For me, well, I've been doing it for just over 3 years now, and it took me probably about a year, maybe even like a year and a half before I started to make money on my blog. And a lot of that was because of my social media. Like building my Instagram page and my social media platform helped me bring more traffic to my blog. And that's when brands started to notice my Instagram as well as my blog, which started getting the brand deals, and the traffic also is what helped, the AdSense and using affiliate links and having my social media audience see me as somebody who they can see, like, I'm recommending something and you can, buy it from me. So yeah, about a year and a half it took me.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm going to go to a question for Maddie. Do bad backlinks affect you? If someone is linking to a site that is not reputable, does that affect your site?
Sure. So I think that in general, yeah, you want to be very cognizant of who you're linking to and who's linking to you, and something that you could look at for further information if you do notice that like spammy looking websites are linking to you is what's called disavowing backlinks, and you can do this in Google Search Console.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to go back to Onika and Steffi. We had a question about using stock photography, and I know it was in one of the slides, but can you all talk about the issues that you think would come up for your types of blogs by using stock photography? And Onika, you can go first again.
Well, for me, it's funny because my blog is very personal. My blog is called Onika the Traveler. It chronicles my life in travels, and I talk about travel through an educational and cultural lens. So in order to be authentic to what I'm doing, it's always been imperative that I take my own photos, and a lot of the time I'm in them, especially on social media. But also, I just didn't want to have to worry about copyright. I didn't want anybody coming after me because I was not I didn't have permission to use their photography, and quite frankly, it was just easier and more interesting for me to travel to all these places and to photograph these places with like my own equipment.
Perfect. Steffi, you can answer.
So for me, some of the struggles that you can deal with when it comes to choosing stock photography is finding something that is not totally cheesy and that is still relatable to what you're posting. So like you don't want to post something that's just completely generic, which Unsplash and Pexels have a really good selection of photos that you can choose from. But a lot of the things I struggle with is like my pop culture content when I'm writing about, for example, like how to eat vegan food at Taco Bell. And I want to choose a photo that's like, okay, well, this is Taco Bell. How do I do this? And again, just like Onika said about copywriting can be an issue that you deal with. And for this, I actually used a website called Deposit Photos, and I invested spending $20 a month to be able to use photos on there that are very specific for things like Taco Bell or Hulu or Netflix, and being able to talk about this specifically.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that's very important and super helpful to think about. Maddie, I have another question for you. How do you go about building backlinks or creating those relationships to get backlinks?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of different tactics. And I think one that's a really easy way to get started is to set up some sort of mentions tool. I use one called Awario. It's AWARIO. But like mentions is another one. There's a bunch. And you can set it up so that whenever somebody mentions you on their blog or on their website and it's not linked to you, that you get that alert. And then what I would do is to approach them and say, hey, thanks so much for linking to my blog. Really appreciate that. I noticed that you didn't include a link. So if you could add that in, I would really appreciate that. And I always try to answer the question of what's in it for me, for that person who's taking the time to do that. And so like a couple of things that you could offer in exchange for them doing that. One thing would be to say like, I'll share that post on my social media or like I'll include it in my next email newsletter or something like that. And I would recommend against immediately suggesting a reciprocal backlink where you're also linking back to them, because that can start to get a little spammy with Google. But that's one really great way to do it. I think another thing is just to create assets that are inherently link worthy, like infographics, for example.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, actually. Awesome, thank you. I'm going to do one more quick question. And so, Onika, did you have any, oh goodness, I just lost the question. Hold on just a second. Oh, okay. So how long or how many hours a day or days a week do you put inside your blog with the traveling and photography and all of that together? About how long a week do you think you spend on it?
Well, now that it's my full-time job, I probably spend a good 4 hours a day working on, just working on not necessarily my website, but on my social, on, different assignments that I have to do, because I do a number of different travel-related things, like within media. And a lot of these jobs that I do get, they've come on the back of the stuff that I've been writing on my blog for years. So yeah, I would say that I spend probably a solid 4 hours a day working on different aspects of my business. Photography takes up a lot of my time, like editing, like taking photos, sorting through photos, editing photos. And that makes sense because as a travel blogger and as a travel journalist, it really hinges on the imagery of the travels that I'm taking.
Absolutely. And I would say that your photography is beautiful. You always have really, really perfect photos online. Okay, you're welcome. And Steffi, a quick question for you. What did you do for hashtag research, or what do you do for hashtag research when you're introducing new topics or new things, saying that you're a lifestyle blogger and talk about many different subjects?
hashtag research for my blog or social media, like my Instagram?
Sorry, for your Instagram or social media accounts, yeah.
I basically base my hashtags on, you know, my aesthetic. So I will choose hashtags that have to do with what I am about, which, like, for example, I am about like cozy photos or currently like summer photos. So I do it based off of like seasonal hashtags, specific hashtags based on what the photo is about. So if it is a flat lay photography, I will use flat lay hashtags that I see. And usually when you put the first couple of words, keywords, when you're looking up a hashtag, it will show you how many posts are on that hashtag. And you don't want to use something that has like 4 million posts, but you also don't want to use something that only has like 2,000 posts. You want to use something a little bit in the middle between like 10,000 to 150,000 posts are good hashtags to use when you're trying to hone in on a very specific content, specific people.
That absolutely makes sense. I always tell people do not go for the largest volume hashtags because you'll get lost in the craziness out there. Okay, one last really quick question for Maddie. Do you think that someone would be would they lose anything by having a larger font? They specialize in like senior websites or content for seniors. I know you're really into accessibility and trying to make sure that the web is friendly for everyone. I'd love to hear your SEO thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea to make sure that your content is legible for whoever your target audience is, and being very conscious of that as you're designing your website, your blog. I would say from an SEO perspective, just make sure that you're editing that font size in like the CSS, or like if you have a font size selector, depending on like what kind of editor you're using, versus making it bigger by using heading tags like H1, H2, H3. That's an easy way to make it bigger, but it confuses Google because the point of headings is to distinguish subtopics.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Headers, I know this is not a SEO webinar in particular, so we didn't go into like H1s and H2s, but basically when you look at a screen and you see that there's a big header, Google reads that as like, you know, one of the main points of your post. So if you have too many of those, it can get confusing. So we do have an SEO webinar that we'll link to in our recap of this webinar so that you can look it up if you're interested in learning a little bit more about SEO in particular. Also, Maddie has given made herself available online for anyone who has questions. I did drop all of their links in our chat box. It's the one underneath the questions box. There's links to all of their Instagrams and social media and websites, as well as information on the blogger book and how you can get that. I will say we do have a few physical copies left of the book, and it is amazing. It looks great. It's super exciting. I'm so proud to have worked on this with these lovely ladies on the call. If you'd like a physical copy, we do have some. Due to COVID, we do have limited numbers of printed copies. But if you like one, follow us on Instagram at Bluehost. Very simple, just at Bluehost. Send us a message saying, hey, I was on your webinar. I'd love a physical copy of your book, and we may be able to send you one. We definitely can't make any promises, but we want to try to send as many out as we can. I would suggest following all of these ladies online if you have the opportunity. They have fantastic websites, fantastic content, and I think they did a great job in presenting today. And I'm so thankful that they lended their time today. Do you all have any follow-up words before I let everyone go? No? Great. Thank you again for your time, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our webinar, and we will be back next month with a series. Look out for your email for that. And we will talk to you soon. Have a great day and a lovely weekend. Goodbye.